Justice without revenge. How exactly do you hold powerful elites accountable for their actions without accidentally tearing the entire system apart in the process? The core question we're looking at today is this: how do we maintain the rule of law and actually hold powerful people accountable for things like corruption, abuse of office, or constitutional violations without turning justice into a political weapon? It is a massive structural dilemma. Obviously, we want justice, but we desperately need to avoid these endless cycles of political vengeance. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the accountability paradox. Second, the accountability ladder. Third, truth and transitional justice. Finally, number 4, due process and immunity. The accountability paradox. Modern democracies are actually incredibly vulnerable from the inside, and this whole paradox basically lives between two very dangerous extremes. On one side, you have impunity. If elites are operating with zero consequences, public trust completely collapses, and the whole constitutional order becomes fatally compromised. On the other side, you have retaliatory lawfare. If justice gets weaponized to selectively dismantle the opposition without any rigorous constraints, it sparks an incredibly destabilizing cycle of vengeance. You end up in a situation where every new administration simply punishes the last one. Unchecked impunity has absolutely catastrophic real-world consequences. Consider the tragic ethnic cleansing of the Rohingya Muslim minority in Myanmar. Powerful state and military actors operated with absolute impunity, and it led to thousands of deaths and mass displacement. It is a grim illustration of what happens when a state completely fails to check its own power. On the other hand, even massive, well-intentioned anti-corruption efforts can stumble into the opposite extreme. Look at Brazil's Operation Car Wash, or Lava Jato. While it was explicitly targeting grand corruption, the electorate became deeply divided. Many citizens perceived the decision to prosecute certain political figures as unjust partisan lawfare. It demonstrates how anti-corruption efforts can trigger a constitutional malaise if people believe they are politically selective, which ultimately threatens democratic consolidation. The accountability ladder. How exactly do we avoid those two extremes? The answer can be a multi-tiered framework called the accountability ladder. What is really interesting about this model is how it progresses. It begins with exploratory fact-finding at the bottom and climbs all the way to severe criminal sanctions at the top. Crucially, the required evidentiary standard scales upward at every level. By distributing enforcement across administrative, civil, and criminal channels, you do not have to rush straight into a highly polarizing criminal trial merely to achieve some form of justice. Let's break down those bottom rungs. Step 1 is investigation. This involves using Congress or special prosecutors to uncover facts based initially on reasonable suspicion. Step 2 is public truth-telling. Here, the focus shifts toward transparency. It is about establishing a clear historical record and vindicating victims. This often relies on voluntary testimony, sometimes in exchange for limited immunity. As we move up the ladder, we transition into restorative and administrative justice. Step 3 is civil remedies. Think of measures such as asset forfeiture or lawsuits. These require only a preponderance of the evidence to deprive bad actors of ill-gotten wealth. Step 4 introduces professional consequences. This requires clear and convincing evidence to disqualify compromised officials from holding positions of public trust, ensuring that the system is properly vetted and protected. Finally, we reach the top tiers. Step 5 is institutional reform. This means using legislative mandates to fundamentally restructure compromised institutions so that these abuses cannot happen again. Step 6 is criminal prosecution. This is the highest tier because it imposes severe retributive punishment. It therefore demands the highest standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, along with rigorous due process protections such as the presumption of innocence. Truth and transitional justice. All right, truth and transitional justice, or repairing the system. This kind of structured approach is especially vital when an entire society needs to heal. Transitional justice is used heavily in post-conflict societies or societies emerging from dictatorship, where human rights violations have been so extensive that ordinary courtrooms simply cannot handle their scale. You need a holistic approach that brings together criminal, restorative, and social justice at the same time. Truth commissions are a major part of this process. They pursue specific goals such as establishing facts, discovering the ultimate fate of missing individuals, and recommending long-term reparations. This highlights how genuine justice can sometimes be achieved outside a traditional courtroom through profound public truth-telling. It also illustrates how truth commissions generate a complex web of accountability. They create what is called horizontal accountability among different state agencies, forcing governments to answer for their actions and implement recommendations. At the same time, they build vertical accountability directly between civil society and the state. Another major administrative tool is lustration. These are transitional public employment laws used to vet and dismiss officials who collaborated with former repressive regimes. We saw this in post-communist Poland, for example. It is an incredibly powerful tool, but it must be applied proportionally and subjected to strict judicial review. Individual culpability must be assessed. Otherwise, the new system risks replicating the arbitrary control of the past. Due process and immunity. Due process and immunity, or precedence in the law. Let's look at how these same principles apply to the highest executive in a stable democracy. A fantastic historical anchor for this is the Watergate crisis in the United States. It stands as a highly successful example of a consolidated democracy using its existing constitutional channels to hold a president accountable without collapsing the government in the process. Following the timeline from the June 1972 break-in through the appointment of special investigators, the pivotal moment arrived in October 1973. President Nixon's attempts to obstruct justice during the infamous Saturday Night Massacre triggered massive public and congressional backlash. Ultimately, a new prosecutor was appointed. This process eventually forced Nixon to turn over the tapes and resign. The system worked, preserving the rule of law over presidential impunity. But as you might expect, applying the law to the presidency remains incredibly complex today. Consider this excerpt from the 2024 Supreme Court ruling in Trump versus United States, which outlines the modern legal doctrine. The president enjoys no immunity for his unofficial acts. The president is not above the law, but Congress may not criminalize the president's conduct in carrying out the responsibilities of the executive branch. The crucial point is the structural line drawn by the court. On one side, you have official acts. When a president exercises core constitutional powers, the president is entitled to presumptive or absolute immunity. This is intended to ensure that an energetic executive is not completely paralyzed by the constant threat of prosecution. On the other side, unofficial acts involving private or personal conduct enjoy absolutely no immunity. This maintains the foundational principle that no individual is ever above the law. Bringing all of this together, the core analysis from our sources concludes that if we want to prevent democratic collapse, we cannot rely solely on retributive criminal trials. By utilizing the full accountability ladder and deploying restorative, financial, and institutional remedies, the state demonstrates to its citizens that the pursuit of justice is genuinely a commitment to democratic values and not merely partisan vengeance. This leaves us with one final provocative thought about the health of our institutions. Looking at current political events, is your democracy climbing the accountability ladder? Or is it falling into retaliatory lawfare? Thank you so much for joining me. Keep asking those tough questions, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Remember, you are worth the time it takes to slow down, listen within, and care for yourself. If you found this helpful, please subscribe for more mindful insights. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself.